All right, so good morning. Welcome to the latest in the series of Chamber Sparks and Cents. Today, we will be talking about fraud and all the fun stuff that goes along with that. Thank you to our presenters from Northfield Savings Bank, and I will introduce Tony Matz from Northfield Savings Bank, who will take us through the bulk of the presentation. Tony, it's all yours.
Yeah, so thanks for joining, everybody. Just a quick introduction to myself. I'm a community banking officer with the Northfield Savings Bank. Also joining from Northfield Savings Bank is Bob O'Neill and Christine Martin. They helped to oversee security within the bank. I've got a PowerPoint here just to kind of go over some of the common things that we see, maybe some suggestions on things to look for. And I want to preface this by saying this is strictly educational and informational. I don't mean to scare anybody, but it is important for us to kind of educate on things we see, because it's a everyday thing that we go through at the bank. So that being said, I'll start sharing my screen and go through our presentation today. Okay, so scams and frauds. General rule of thumb, and Bob and Christine, feel free to stop me if you have anything that you want to input. You know, it's the old adage: if it's too good to be true, it is. You know, these are probably look a little funny, but it's things we see. You know, nobody's sending you free money for something. If checks and money don't just come out of the blue. That's just not a thing. So that should be a red flag if you ever see that. So these are the top 10 scams reported to the Attorney's General Office in 2022. So the most common is unauthorized order or package delivery, and we have a slide. Our next slide kind of goes over what that looks like. Then from there, computer tech support scams, sweepstakes, false lottery winnings, law enforcement imposters, a family emergency imposter, fake websites, online listings, a debt collection scam, deceitful solicitations, identity theft, and Medicare card phishing. Real quick. So this is a little bit on unauthorized packages. Kind of how it works. You're going to receive a package that you didn't order. You come home from work and get a mysterious envelope or a package at your door. A retailer, oftentimes a third-party seller, sent you items that they found online. You write a glowing 5-star review of the product to boost their ratings. That's kind of what's in it for them. Always report these to the retailer. So, Amazon, Walmart, those are kind of some of the big third-party vendors where, it's an imposter presenting to be a representative of one of those companies. Gonna move this out of the way. So the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, has ruled you have a legal right to keep the merchandise without penalty. Business and investment fraud. Business or investment fraud schemes, they'll try to lure you in with the promise of a low or no risk investment, offering high returns. The scammers often ask for upfront cash in exchange for guaranteed future returns. Like everything else, there is no such thing as a guaranteed investment. So automatic red flag that's going to be a scam. Always research the opportunity before investing, and never rush into anything. A quick Google search, if you're ever curious, can shed a lot of information on the situation. you can always call your bank too. Let them know what you came across, and there's resources out there. You can do the research yourself online, and banks are always willing to kind of share their information or insight on these sorts of situations.
A thing on that business investment, people might refer to it as a Ponzi scam too. They might and that just luring other people to come in to pay previous investors. So as Tony said, nobody's giving you anything for free here. There's a quid pro quo. You just don't know what it is when you get lured into these things. And a lot of times it's sort of either passing through money and you can keep a little bit, or directly asking you for money in a case like this. And as the slide showed for 2022, those were the 10 most reported in Vermont. If you try and Google how many scams there are, I don't know what the pie chart would look like, unfortunately. But the basic aspect is they want your information to get money, or they're going to get your money somehow, or put you liable for money that they're giving bad quote unquote paper, if you will, to get you to cash it and then forward the money back. So that's really the biggest thing as we go through these. And if you go to Iowa, they could have a different top 10, but I would almost say, Christine, tell me your thoughts. 60% of these are going to be the same listing. And I don't care if you go to AARP, which is a great website to look at these things, but different attorney generals are going to come up with a different list, if you will. You agree?
Yeah, it depends on how the reporting happens. Right. So each state is going to be a little different, but overall, these are the types of things that everybody's seeing, and it's pretty consistent.
Yeah. And it has been for 20 years. They've grown, but sorry, Tony, I just wanted to jump in there.
No, please do. I appreciate it. That's great. I think we're on charity and disaster fraud is where I think we were at. Give only to established charities, that and that you trust. You can always use the FTC's resources to research the charity. Link to that is the third bullet point. And then give only using check or credit card, never through a gift card, virtual currency, or a wire transfer. I do want to touch on paying through a gift card. No reputable business or charity or entity is going to ask to be paid via a gift card. And the way that scam works is, they'll ask you to go down to the bank, withdraw some cash, or use a credit card or a debit card and buy a prepaid, like a Visa or an Amazon gift card. And they ask you to scratch off the card number and maybe text it to them or snap a picture of that card number. Once that card number is sent to the fraudster, that money's gone. I don't know that I've ever, Christine or Bob, maybe you could confirm this or shed some light, but I've never heard of once that information on that prepaid gift card is in the wrong hands, that money's gone.
Yep. I've never known it to be there more than like an hour, essentially. Yep. It's like holding the car, having a Lamborghini, but no motor. Yeah.
Yep. So, reputable organizations and entities, they're going to want to get paid by check or credit card, which are the traditional ways to be paid. And if anybody ever asks for payment any other way, again, automatic red flag. It's probably best to steer clear.
That's some of the best advice. Anything with a gift card that they ask you to pay or send and not want the card, and it's just you're losing your money. Is the bottom line.
So ransomware, or yeah, so we're getting probably into more of the tech or computer issues. So ransomware is a malicious software or malware that prevents you from accessing your own computer's files. The scammers demand payment in order to relinquish control of your computer. So you know, it's a ransom or a blackmail. I don't know if the next slide. Yeah. So how to avoid ransomware? Keep operating systems, software, and applications current and up to date. So you know, don't get behind on software updates. You know, keep those up to date, because you know the apps and the operating systems are quite frequently, you know, updating their security within their applications. For businesses or personal individuals, you know, train your staff if you're a business owner, or you know, if you're not, just train yourself not to just automatically click on any link that you receive, usually through an email, especially if it's an unknown sender. So you know what you can do is you can hover your mouse or your cursor over a link, and it reveals what that link really is. You know, what they're trying to do there is to get you to click on a link that's going to take you to a completely bogus website under the pretenses that it's something legitimate and entirely different than where that link's actually taking you. Make sure your antivirus and anti-malware software solutions are set up to automatically update and run regular scans. Back up your data regularly, double check that the backups are actually completed, and secure your backups. Make sure they're not connected to computers and networks that they're backing up. Create a continuity plan in case your business or organization is the victim of a ransomware attack.
I think one of the things, Christine, too, is, Tony, on these ransom, especially with businesses, you hear about, you know, business and being their data being stolen and hacked and frozen. And these people come in and they do that once. They're going to probably come back 2 more times. They're going to come back a month later and they're going to say, now what do you want for me to not sell the information that I froze? Because they didn't just freeze you and lock you out. They actually stole it. They made a copy. And then the third time they might come back after you pay them more money. And then they'll say, gee, Tony, since I froze you out, I sold you back your copy. How about I've now become your protector? So it was just a strong arm way to become a protector, and you then pay a monthly or whatever the agreement is. But they used to be, and I don't know where they are now, but in that middle level, they were very honorable. They actually gave you back your information, you know, if you paid for it. But they got you to pay for it twice. You know, they got you to pay for it to open up the account, your network, and then they sold the information back to you. There might be a trend. I don't know if it'll ever, you know, turn. They might ask for more money not to sell it again rather than becoming a protector. Who knows where is it going to go? But those are essentially right now the 3 things. They lock you out, then they sell you back your information so they won't sell it, and then they ask to become your firewall, if you will, and that's, you know, just at a higher level. So that's how these things happen when you go, well, on a business level. On a personal level, a little bit the same thing. You know, there's certain variations. You know, hey, you know, your whatever web page somebody might be in, you hear of sextortion now, especially with the younger kids. You know, getting in and getting information, not maybe your whole network or your whole computer personally, but certain aspects of it. And that's what this stuff is. It's just electronic hostage taking.
Yeah. And you know, I think the other important piece to mention on this is there's no entity too big or too small to be susceptible to this sort of ransomware or takeover. You know, there's been cases in the news close to home So this, this is a very real thing, and it doesn't discriminate based off the size of your business. Another very common one that I see a lot in my branch is romance scams. You meet someone online, or a scammer becomes friends with a victim, usually through social media. A relationship, so to say, starts with a friendship, grooming the victim, and then things start to take the turn more towards the romantic side. Once the scammers establish the relationship, they've established the trust with the victim, they'll start asking for money for various reasons, often draining an individual of their life savings, or recruit the customer to become a money mule. And Bob or Christine, I don't know if you guys want to maybe describe what a money mule.
So money mule is somebody that is they're accepting money from the scammers from someone else's account, basically. So either they get a check or they get a transfer into their account, and then they move it on to someone else. So it's money laundering. They're moving money from one person to another, and some of them are doing it knowing what they're doing, and other people, I would say the majority of them, don't realize that they're being used as part of another scam. But it's a problem. So if anybody, approaches you to accept money and then forward it on, that's pretty much what it is. What they're doing is having you be a money mule.
Thank you. So some red flags to look for. Scammers always out of reach, far away. They're, common is, they're in the military, deployed overseas, on an oil rig out in the middle of the ocean somewhere, or in a foreign country doing humanitarian work. Scammer communicates only by text, messenger, or phone. I want to follow up on that. Only by text, messenger, or phone, and some conversations that I have with customers who, are involved in this. That the reason that there's no email or like a FaceTime is the excuse is that they don't have internet out on the oil rig out in the middle of the ocean. So you got to kind of take a step back and like, does that make sense? If if there was no internet, how are they texting? How are they sending you a message on Facebook, and how are they calling you? So, when you can take a step back, things just sometimes they don't make sense, and you got to kind of put those pieces together, I guess. Scammers usually a widow or a widower with strong religious background. Scammers send photos, either of a beautiful woman or a very handsome man. Those are just pictures that they found on Google Images. It's not really them. And when it's a romance scam, sometimes people have a hard time believing that that's not the person that's really messaging them. There's always a new reason why the scammer can't be there in person. So I think that on our side, and the biggest red flag for these romance scams is that oftentimes they've been communicating it's not uncommon for a year and a half. There's always a reason why they've never met in person. That for me is probably the biggest red flag.
I think you're right, Tony. When you were talking about when you step back and you look at these and look for we say it's obvious, but sometimes as you get into these relationships and you get more involved with the person, and it's not the person in the photo and it's not the person telling you things, you get blinders. It's natural and stuff, but does it make sense? Are they asking you to lie? Because the longer you go, the more requests they'll put in. And Christine's seen it. I've seen it. Tony's seen it. They'll look you straight in the eye and they'll lie to you, the victim. if you will, and they're going through their own money, or they're processing checks through their own account. I've had cases where the person was going to leave their spouse, and she was processing checks through an account that they set up for her at another bank, and it was just lie after lie after lie after lie that she was saying, because she was being directed and by these people. Probably the only thing that comes out of their mouth that's the truth is, how long have they known each other? And I'll put known in quotes. It will be 6 months. It will be a year. It's crazy, and when you start asking really intimate questions, if they've ever met, in the sense of, everybody remembers when they met somebody special in their life, the weather, or where it was, or what restaurant, or what have you. And you ask these people questions like that, and they say, Chicago. We're in Chicago. They can't go any more finite, north side, south side, the aquarium, anything. So these scams really are heartbreaking at the same time. And getting back to the mules, if they get caught in these repeatedly, they then go from a victim to a participant. So in the criminal aspect, they go from being this, an unfortunate victim, to a willing participant, being part of the crime, because they've been told, not to do things, not to get into these scams. And they go back, they get into another romance scam, or they hook back up with the person. So those are other aspects to, for people to know. You can go from victim to a suspect, if you will, and being held liable.
So on to online sales scams. Scammers post ads online for property that they don't own. It could be cars, merchandise, pets, you name it. Red flags, they offer an excellent deal, which kind of goes back to that very first slide. If it's too good to be true, it is. They'll try to rush you through the sale. They can't meet in person. They only communicate via text or some other form of messaging system. They have to be paid by wire transfer, the gift cards again, or cryptocurrency. So again, those are things that once they've left your account, they're gone, which is why they're asking for those forms of payment. So it's very difficult, and if not impossible, to retrieve those forms of payments once they've left your bank account. Sweepstakes or a false lottery winnings, you never have to pay to get a prize, and that's the big piece. The way this works, you'll get, somebody might call you or email you, or maybe even get something in the mail. Congratulations, you've won $10 million. Before you can claim your prize, we need you to send back your taxes in advance for these winnings. It's not something the IRS does. You don't pay your taxes up front on those winnings. So that's how the scam works. They trick you into sending a payment in order to receive your prize, and the prize is not real. Paying fees does not increase your chances of winning. U.S. citizens cannot win a lottery in another country. All things to keep in mind. So if you get notice that you won a prize from Canada, that's not legitimate. So grandparent scam. Scammer poses as a grandchild or another family member, claiming to be in a dire situation and need help. It creates panic and fear and a sense of urgency in the victim, who's an elder. And the goal of this is to trick the grandparent into sending money to get little Timmy out of jail. It's, I think the way this one works is it creates that urgency and that panic. Sometimes it'll be followed up to some red flags. Don't call dad. Can we just keep this between you and me? Oftentimes it's a late night or an early morning phone call. Caller claims to have been in an accident. They're either in hospital or jail. Again, asked to keep it a secret. Please don't tell my parents. Let's keep this between just you and me. Caller will pass the phone to a trusted official. If it's a jail, if they're saying they're in jail, they'll hand the phone over to a third person claiming to be the police officer or a doctor or lawyer, whatever the situation or the setting is claimed to be, in an attempt to be more convincing. This is another common one. It starts with a phone call from somebody pretending to be a family member in distress.
It's really too common, and it really hurts because they think that they're helping out a family member. The Raymond scams are bad enough. Losing money in a Ponzi scam is bad enough. These have a different aspect of just grabbing at you, and they'll also put a rush. If they don't ask you to keep it secret, they'll just, I need it because I have to go. He needs surgery. They're going to be in front of the court in the morning. They'll try and do that. To persuade or get the person to get money sent. And again, last time I checked, you can go to a bail bondsman, you can put your house up for sale. I didn't know any court that's taking gift cards to bail out in another country. I don't think any hospitals are taking gift cards for surgery. And sometimes they might ask you to do that. Sometimes they just want you to send the money, some other means, to include, put the cash in an envelope. So don't always think that everything, grandparent scams are always going to do this, with gift cards. They could do a wire. Once a wire goes overseas, it's gone. Once it goes anywhere, it's gone. They could just ask you to mail the cash. People will wrap it in, a magazine and send it off. So, again, don't get, the nuances are somewhat standard, but they can, change them.
So phishing scams. Scammers will send email messages to try and get you to enter your passwords, account numbers, or other personal information. Again, the messages appear to be from trusted senders. It's kind of a follow-up to something we touched on earlier. Never click on links, especially from an unknown sender. Keep your antivirus protection up to date. Use multi-factor authentication whenever possible. Inspect emails for generic terms and irregularities, spelling errors, etc. And I want to point out again, for the links, you can always, or you should always, hover over the link and you'll get a pop-up with where that link's really taking you. So this is smishing. So this is using text message to capture personal information such as passwords, accounts, numbers, or social security numbers. So similar to the phishing, this is done through text message.
I think there's probably about 5 or 6 of those ishing type things, Tony.
Yeah, they're they different forms of communication,
right?
But they're all the same concepts. They're presenting a false link or false information to trick you into getting the information that they're looking for.
Absolutely. I'm just wishing they would go away.
Yes. Business email compromise. illegal access. Criminals gain entry to a victim's device through hacking, phishing, websites, or malware. And they deceive their victim into transferring money into their bank account. You might get an email from a CEO or a high-level person from your company requesting you to do something, send money or send out a check or make a wire. I think that's maybe kind of the thought behind that one is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob or Christine, but that's pretending to be a high-level individual within a company to pressure an employee to sending funds under false pretenses. And there's social engineering. Criminals can target their victims based on information shared on social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, the other million ones that are out there.
I think, on the business email, like Tony said, pressuring somebody to do it, it's a white pressure. Oh, the president, the emails from the president. So I have to, do I have to stand up and read it when he can't see me or she can't see me? One of those type of things. But, people say, well, how can that happen? Businesses, people are on social media. They might find a business owner that's away and they know they're outside the office. So then they might send an email at that point because it's harder to, Tony's out of the office. It's harder for me to confirm that Tony wanted me to do it. And maybe I can use an email and I'll respond back to that email. And you might just, as Tony stated before, look at the email, hover over it. Is there a slight change? Is there a dot where there shouldn't be a dot? A hyphen where there shouldn't be a hyphen? Is that actually how they actually shorten the name, of the business up by the initials, so there are other indicators, but, it's getting somebody to do it. Do they normally ask this? Tony normally ask me to do these things. Number one, does Tony normally ask do a wire? Those would be all red flags, as Tony said, is, step back and look at it. Is this normal? The president never asked me to do a wire. Big red flag.
Then urgent request. Criminal impersonates a supplier requesting an urgent payment or change of banking information or banking details, or a senior employee in the company with authority to authorize payments. So again, that presenting that urgency and things need to be done rapidly to get you to make a bad decision. Never. It's hard. It's easier said than done, but never rush, I guess, is maybe some advice I would give.
Yeah. Go to that next one. Excuse me. These are some of the ways.
Yep. So we got CEO fraud. Employee receives a message from the CEO instructing them to make a payment. A false invoice. Scammer sends fake invoice with payment instructions. Account compromise. Employee email is hacked and used to request payment to vendors. Payroll change fraud. HR department receives a change of an employee's bank information. So when the next time there's payday, that check goes to the scammer, not to the real employee.
Tony, real quick, the account compromise, we see that in like real estate transactions. You're buying a house from a realtor and a lawyer might be involved, but one of the emails of the 2 or 3 parties gets hacked and then they get you to redirect a down payment. So that's how it can happen personally, if you will. You're going to buy a house and all of a sudden you think, hey, here are the wire instructions all of a sudden for your down payment. And then you go wire, 20, 40, 70, $100,000. And it didn't come from any of the parties. Somebody snuck in, and got you to do it. With an account, with the company, it can happen the same way. And the biggest thing on that is if it's an existing relationship with a vendor, always double check, always call, and you'll see that. And I think in the next slide, we have some examples of how to work to prevent some of this stuff.
So, yep, how to stop a BEC. In all the scenarios, the email appeared to be from a trusted source, but in reality, the scammer has hijacked the email and inserted fraudulent payment instructions. So teach your employees about this fraud. Teach them to ask, does this seem normal? Is this something that happens regularly, or is this a new request? Would CEO ask me to do this? Why isn't the vendor going through the normal process of updating payments? Never rush the process, even if the email states it's urgent. Always do due diligence despite the urgency. Always verify information received in the email via phone call using a known phone number. Never send money without verifying the instructions. So we call that a callback verification. If any sort of payment instruction, specifically a wire transfer, if it's been received via an email or a phone call, take the extra couple minutes to call the person that sent you those instructions on a known and trusted phone number, and just ask them to read back the instructions, or you read back the instructions to them. There have been situations where between a legitimate sender and a legitimate receiver of a transaction, that instructions were altered. So it is very important to always conduct that callback verification to a known and trusted number to anybody that sends you payment instructions via email.
I think, Tony, you could almost take the last three, just the first half, of them for anything. Teach employees about fraud, teach everybody about fraud. Does it seem normal? If you step outside, does this seem like a normal thing? Just in general. Never rush through anything. Do some double checking, and always verify what, the contact information that I know. I'd rather go through Google than what they give me in an email or a text, if you will, if I don't know the number. And so sometimes it's scary. You Google a number and it says this number has been known to be involved with fraud for the past 6 months, and it's all over the country or whatever. But if you just use those three things, it's sort of like washing your hands, saying please and thank you. We'd probably be in a better state of affairs.
Counterfeit bills. This is still very much a thing. Counterfeit pens. They did. That's the pen that you might see at the convenience store, or it detects the starch in the bills, and if it's just a normal sheet of paper, the line on the pen will be very dark or black. And if it's real currency and the pen detects the starch in the bills, it's more of a like a lighter tan kind of color.
Gold yellow.
Yep. Use a black light. Currencies of each denomination have kind of an invisible or difficult to see threads through them. Depending on what type of currency it is, $100 bill, a $50 bill, that strip shows up in a different location. You look on the right-hand side, I think all banks probably have these behind their teller line. You could place the bill under that black light, and it'll reveal where that security thread is. And then on the black light device, there's a corresponding mark that shows you where that security thread should be lined up with.
Christine did this where she had said, the counterfeit pens really haven't been useful on notes since about 2005, and prior to about 1968 they weren't useful. So they were only good from 1968 to about 2005. Bills outside that range, which are still good, the pens really don't work at all on them. So that's why we pushed the black light for anything, $5 and larger. Your ones and twos don't have them. We're lucky at the bank to always have a great, physical example that we can, check a note against all the money in the drawers, which is the best. So they are huge. I think, Christine, what are we seeing a lot of the movie notes right now and the Chinese character notes?
Yeah, those are pretty much, and there's examples, I think, coming up of those.
So great examples too.
Okay, so this is a slide on what Bob and Christine were just discussing. So they're counterfeit bills. We want to watch for motion picture money. And you'll see that on the bill on the bottom left, the backside of that $100 bill. Motion picture use only. Looks very real. There's those subtle, very subtle, phrases in there, letting you know that this is only for the movie. It's not for real life. And the other one you see down here in the bottom right is you'll see, foreign symbols on the bills. The American currency doesn't have that, those sort of foreign letters or foreign characteristics on them.
You'll also see it'll be different. It may try and look like a stamp. So somebody stamping money is illegal. There was a person that was about 10 years ago, Christine, was stamping money, and it would be not for political donations. That's illegal. The note is still good. We will take it. We'll throw it in for destruction because the money shouldn't be altered, if you will. But these are, I've yet to see a Chinese foreign character letters put on a note, even in a stamp. So my first guess is going to be that's going to be a bad net. There are other indicators that the bank can use to verify it, even outside the black light, if they happen to be using good quality paper, if you will, because the paper is highly regulated, where it's made and how to get it.
Okay, so you've come to realize that you have been scammed. So now what do you need to do to kind of stop the process, or hopefully just, try to recoup losses? Talk to your bank. Doesn't matter which bank you belong to. They're all experts. We've seen it all. We're familiar with it. Give them a call. Stop down. Be honest and upfront. As we understand, it can be an embarrassing situation, but just describe what happened. We're here to help. All the banks are there to help your customers. It's not just Northfield Savings Bank. Some cases we can assist with fraud recovery. I think the important word in there is some cases. And we can help secure your accounts. We can freeze them. We can lock them down. We can get brand new account numbers set up that aren't compromised. And we can offer you guidance on reporting to the appropriate authorities and channels. And I think too, it's just kind of off the top of my head, if that's why the scammers tell you to in some situations to lie to the bank. There's really no reason to lie to your bank representative at all. And the reason they want you to lie is because, you know, we see these and we're trained, and we can help. And that's why the directions from the scammers and the fraudsters are, you know, are to lie to us.
And Tony, I might add that we, you know, if you've ever come into the bank and either tried to take out a large amount of cash or deposit a large amount of cash, the tellers may ask you questions about that. So they may, you know, make conversation with you. Bottom line, you know, we're trying to determine if a customer is being scammed. And so by having that conversation and asking questions, you know, that helps us evaluate the answers and figure out if we just need to move on with the transaction or if we should be asking additional questions. So we recently put up signs in our lobbies that says, you know, we ask you these questions for fraud prevention purposes. And if somebody's asked you to lie to the bank, you're probably being scammed. So we're kind of being that blatant with the message on the teller line, because we really want people to take that opportunity to say, they did tell me to lie to the bank, so maybe I should, you know, maybe I should think about this before I proceed.
Thanks, Christine. So this is, well, Christine or Bob, do you want to talk about this slide?
Sure. So IC3.gov is a reporting portal it's run by the FBI, and typically this is used for large scale events. So if you had a business email compromise where somebody wired out, you know, a large amount of money and did it recently, we can report to IC3, and then we can ask for them to assist in recovering the funds. And they have a team that's sitting there waiting for these reports to come in. So they're on top of these things as soon as they hit. Time is of the essence, because if you hit it within maybe 24 hours, there's a better chance of recovering the funds. And so beyond that, they also keep track of all of these events. So even if it's a, you know, $2,500 loss as opposed to a $100,000 loss, reporting it helps them, you know, eventually tie pieces together if it's a larger scale crime ring that's operating these smaller scams. So anytime that there's a online scam or somebody's lost money of any amount, we do recommend that you report to IC3.
FTC.gov. Reporting fraud helps the FTC investigate and bring cases against fraud, scams, bad business practices. The information gathered is shared between approximately 2,800 law enforcement agencies. Reporting is useful and beneficial, even though, you know, sometimes the reality might be that you're not going to get your money back. But reporting and going through the proper channels, regardless of the outcome, is still a very important thing to do.
And Tony, I think, you know, as Christine said, with IC3 and FTC, you know, everybody goes, oh, I got to report it to all these people or all these, you know, organizations. It does feel a little overwhelming, but there's a bottom line aspect to it. The FTC is truly a information gathering aspect. They do share it with other partners. IC3 is more direct route because it's part of the FBI on certain things. But you know, as you'll see some more, you know, there's so many other things if you become the victim. When you send money, you're a victim in that sense, but there are other crimes that could happen, you know, if you shared your information along with these two organizations and the others that you'll hear about. You know, it's the credit reporting agencies that you have to be concerned with. So the biggest thing is that the first part is, as shown on the slide, after you realize you became a victim of a scam, don't be afraid to talk to the bank. We're there to help you. You know, we're not going to pass judgment. Our mission is to take care of you the best that we can, recover any money, and to make sure that you don't continue to be victimized. It sounds crazy, but that's the bottom line. That's our job, and we're there to support people like Tony and the other branches to fulfill that mission for you guys. And because it's overwhelming. It's like, oh, the world's caving in down on me. You know, I lost the money. I have to admit it to myself. That's huge steps. The admission is a huge step. You got more strength than anybody that admits to anything and asks for help. And that's what we're here for, to do that. Because it's a melee, right, Christine? And trying to do everything.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
And the other thing to remember with all of these scams, this isn't a person that's scamming you. This is a crime ring that's scamming you.
Yes.
So even though there's a person that you've been communicating with, they're working for bigger people. You know, this is what they do. It's a professional job. And they scam people, and they may be, you know, it may be a romance scam, and they've got relationships going with several people. And at the end of the day, they get the payoff, you know, after putting in their time over the months, you know, communicating, they get the money. That money doesn't stay in their pocket. It goes down the line, and it ends up in, you know, cartels, crime rings, you know, it's funding human trafficking, you know, all kinds of things. So all of these scams build into a greater, you know, end result with the crime rings.
And even if it's not a crime ring, it's somebody stealing your money. You know, other people fed off of it on the way up, but you know, you send $100 per se, the bad guy at the top is probably making 40. You know, he might have had to pay 6 other people, you know, along the way. But he's stealing the money. And as Christine said too, the other aspect, it does help finance these organized crime rings that, you know, include, you know, besides the drugs and smuggling, the actual human trafficking of people. So there's a no nexus to all that.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I have to get off for another meeting. This is actually a personal question because, well, I also work in personal finance and I'm helping people who have been scammed left and right, right? But the other thing is that, like, we're trying to sell a car and we think every single person who's contacting us is the scammer. And I'm curious as to how they would get our car and get away with, like, not paying us. And, you know, like, they're like, oh, we're going to get a car loan. And, you know, so my question is, even if we called the bank to say, is this check good? Isn't it possible that the check, they could just withdraw the money or do something so that by the time we deposited it and it cleared, it wouldn't be good? Like, I wouldn't give my car away until I knew that the money was in my hands. So how do people do it? Like, how is it that they scam you and get your car? Like, what are they doing?
So typically what they will do is send you a check, and then you cash the check or you deposit it. And then they'll say, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Something fell through. Can you please return my money? And so you send them back their money. And then however many days later, the check comes back. So that's some of how the online sales scams work is they cancel at the last minute after you've already received the funds, and then they get you to send them back.
And they
a lot
have
of
the
people
car?
don't fall for that. No, they never get the car.
They never get the car. Okay.
And
No,
there's going to be other precursors to this. I'm getting finance, then it will fall through. And then, hey, I'm going to get, Tony owes me money, so let me forward you a check, or let me just forward you a check. But it probably won't be from me if I'm the one buying. The other aspect is what kind of car are you selling and who's asking for it? You
Well,
know, one
that's
of my,
yeah, and that's the other thing. I don't mean to racial profile, but it's all people with Arab names that are contacting us out of state. And I'm like, you can buy a car just like this in your state. Like, why would you be contacting us
right.
in Vermont?
You know, I had a guy that was going to sell a 16-foot Glastron inboard-outboard boat to somebody in Sweden. And I went, really? He goes, oh, but he's going to pay me $3,000 more. I go, no, they're not. And, you know, you look, this was another institution. It was a high-paying executive at a reputable company.
Yeah. So
So
what do you
none of this,
recommend?
none
Like,
of this
I guess what is
targets
the
anybody economically or socially. Everybody's susceptible. Christine and I are susceptible.
right? So
Right.
how do you propose that, like, if we sell even to somebody who purports to be in state, like, because we just don't trust anyone. It's like, is it that we would make the check, that we would hold on to the check for 10 days before they get the car? Or we would know that, like, if it was a check from VSCCU, we could call them and say, is this a valid check that you've submitted for this loan? Is that something that banks will give us that information on?
Up to that institution.
Yeah. If you go to the institution with the check in hand, they will tell you if it's good or not. They will negotiate it and give you an official check for it, you know, things like that. But, you know, when I place ads like this, I always say, you know, in person, sales only, and then whatever payment, you know, cash or Venmo only, you know, things like that, however you want to accept payment. And I put it right in the ad, because if I say it's going to be in person only, then they can't portray their scheme.
These are
Yeah.
just
But it's
recommendations of how to do something. You know, no, you know, this is what you should do from us. I mean, we just can't do that. You know, so you have to make your ultimate decision on who you're going to
No, I
sell to.
know. I mean,
So,
but we're smart people, right? You know, like, we know that, like, something doesn't seem right, but I still, it's not entirely clear to me, like, aside from, like you said, in person, which is only what we would do with a car anyway, but I'm not just going to accept a bank check and let the person drive away with my car.
my
Right.
gut usually helps me a lot. Just saying.
Right.
I don't know about other people.
No, it does for sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. This was helpful. I need to get off, but thanks for this information.
Yeah, so local, trying to remember where we were.
Right here.
Yes, your so it's channels and avenues to, after you realize you've been scammed. I think that's where we were. So local or state law enforcement. You know, you can report counterfeit money to local law enforcement, bad checks that you've been written. If your checks have been stolen, you know, out of a pocketbook or out of the cupboard in your home, or you know, if your credit cards or debit cards are missing. Most locally conducted with a local suspect. Always a resource if you don't think something feels right. You know, like the bankers, the police are there to help. Vermont Attorney General's Consumer Assistance Program. There's the link for it. They'll help consumers resolve complaints and get responses to those complaints. And they'll also provide education on scams and frauds, probably similar to what we've done here today. And always remember, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog.
That is a great slide, Christine.
Yeah.
What's that?
That is a great slide.
Well, it's true. I mean, you know, you think you're talking to whoever they portray to be, but really, at the end of the day, who's behind that computer screen? You don't know.
Right. Absolutely.
I think that was